At Capella University, you can learn at your own pace with our FlexPath learning format. Take 1 or 2 courses at a time and complete as many as you can in a 12-week billing session. With FlexPath, you can even finish the bachelor's degree you started in 22 months for $20,000. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu. Fastest 25% of students. Cost varies by pace, transfer credits, and other factors. Fees apply.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
Hi, welcome to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. This is Dr. Andrew Rimby. I just wanted to let you all know before you listen to today's episode that there are sponsor ads in this episode. Shout out to the sponsors of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. They include the Gay and Lesbian Review magazine, Broadview Press, and That All Gay Classic Cinema podcast. But if you don't want to hear ads in the episode, you know where to go. Our Patreon, patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. You can listen to all episodes ad-free, and you can watch the video version of the episode, which, you know, it's always exciting to see what it's like when I'm posing a question and the guest is giving a really riveting response and seeing their facial expressions. And mine too, where I probably have my hand on my chin and I'm just looking at all at their body language when they're delivering such exciting information. Okay, so remember, please follow us on YouTube. Make sure if you're listening on Spotify or Apple that you not only follow us, but please rate and review. It really, really means a lot. Again, I'm going to plug the YouTube because I'm trying to grow our YouTube presence. Please subscribe to YouTube. Please like our videos. Again, this means the world. Follow us on Instagram at Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Same on TikTok. You're going to see a lot of fun clips on TikTok. I also feature lessons that I'm teaching my students, which usually involves the subjects that you can find here on the podcast. And we have our virtual book club. It's free. It's on Zoom, so it's really easy to join. It's happening on April 27th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are discussing The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. Yes, Mel Robbins, the empowerment self-help guru who you probably have seen on TikTok or Instagram if you scroll all the time. So I hope you join us. If you want to join the book club, just email me at ivorytowerboilerroom@gmail.com, subject heading book club, and I will get you the Zoom link. Okay, I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Hey, true crime friends, welcome back to another episode of True Crime in Academia. As always, I am your host, Mary DePippi. I hope you all have had a wonderful week this week and a great weekend. I know I enjoyed my birthday weekend last weekend, and this weekend, kept it low key. I mean, the weather really didn't help. I was hoping to be able to get outside at some point, but it has just been gloomy and rainy and actually a little bit cold too. So, just not good going outside weather. But that's how spring is now, apparently. Then in like a few weeks, it'll go between like spring and summer weather. And then, the end of spring, it'll just be pre-summer. So spring as I always liked and remembered it just being nice and mild, hanging around between high 50s to about high 60s, low 70s. But having that for like the whole length of spring, you know? And every year, I swear, it feels like it gets shorter and shorter. I hate it. Anywho, another thing that I've been noticing over the past couple of weeks is that there have been a lot of college students and like cases in the news. I saw that like a boat capsized from like a college rowing team, and they were all injured, or most of them were injured. And then there was a football player who it seemed the coach used some sort of cruel, like, retaliatory exercises that led to this, football player's death. And, there were a couple other things that I had seen. So, one of these episodes, I think I might do the next episode. I'm going to do a whole recap of all of them just because it has been a lot. And I'm a little concerned, but I'm hoping it's just a little uptick and then goes back to being quiet. Which I know is strange, I guess, in a way, because without these cases, I don't have a podcast. But also, like, I don't want these things to happen. So, conflict of interest, I guess, whatever. Anyway, this week we are covering the final episode, episode 6 of Hulu and ABC's Death in the Dorms, Season 2, The Disappearance and Murder of Latasha Norman. But first, we're going to take a quick break.
Have you ever wondered, wait, how does Andrew know about all of the new LGBTQ literature, TV, and film in society? Well, I have a secret tool, and it's called the Gay and Lesbian Review. It is my favorite magazine. It is bi-monthly, which means it comes out every 2 months. So right now, the March and April issue just came out. It's an encore issue. It's called When Did the LGBT Movement Begin? There's such exciting articles about what made Stonewall different, a sacred order for sexual outsiders, the house that Hirschfeld built, and so much more in that issue. I actually just had on authors William Benjamin, Margaret Vandenberg, and Lawrence Senelik, who had written to me, and I discuss his responses as a special Gay and Lesbian Review and ITBR podcast episode. So you can look for that in our podcast catalog. It is all about the January and February issue called Strange Fruits. So I can't wait for you all to listen to that. I absolutely love all of the queer history, culture, politics that the Gay and Lesbian Review covers. I love getting my print magazine. It just is so nostalgic having a magazine arrive at my door. But they also have an extensive online edition, so you can get the magazine online. I know so many in my life who've told me that they are now reading the Gay and Lesbian Review for LGBTQ literature recommendations. I love that. So you can use an exclusive code. Stephen from the Gay and Lesbian Review and Richard gave me an exclusive code to share with you all. It is called ITBR Choice. So ITBR Choice. Go to subscribe on the glreview.org, put in that code ITBR Choice, and you will get a free issue with your subscription. So all you'll have to do is where it says what magazine do you want for free, just put March and April or January and February. And I can't wait for you all to get your hands on the Gay and Lesbian Review. Make sure you follow them on Instagram. And please let me know if you're reading the Gay and Lesbian Review because I'd love to shout you out on the podcast.
Latasha Danielle Norman was born in Greenville, Mississippi on April 21st, 1987, to Patricia Bolden, and was raised by her stepfather, Daniel Bolden, or Danny Bolden. She was also Patricia's only daughter. Friends and family described Latasha as ambitious and extremely caring and always having a smile on her face that just radiated throughout the room. and was almost always never angry. Growing up, Latasha was very close with her cousins, specifically her cousins on her father's side, her Norman side. And she specifically looked up to her one cousin, Takesha. Growing up, initially, Latasha wanted to be a teacher because her and her cousins were always playing school. But later on, and as she got older, she decided she actually wanted to pursue accounting. And surprise, surprise, this was also a career and something that her cousin Takesha was studying and looking to pursue as a career. Her parents, her stepfather and her mother, were always super supportive of Latasha and always encouraging her to do her best, not just in school, but just, in life. And she really did. I mean, she was a stellar student. Her grades were amazing. And Latasha would not settle for anything less, than good grades or just putting in the extra effort to go the extra mile. In high school, she was a little shy, but she started to come out of her shell when she became a majorette with her cousin Takesha. And from what it seemed, it's like the majorettes, from what I could tell, look like they're a dance team, which seemed really cool. I mean, the costume that she had on and like had tights and stuff, like, again, to me, it just read dance team. But because of this, she really just came out of her shell and, was making more friends and, just more social. Now, she wanted to go to Jackson State University. Two of her uncles on her Norman side went to Jackson State University and also played football there. So it was pretty much like a family legacy that they were saying, like, to go there and, get an education from there. And, that she wasn't going to be the one to break that tradition. And again, because she was doing great in school and like really excelling academically, she had no issues getting accepted. Also, as far as campuses go, I mean, she did not have that long of a drive. I mean, it was only an hour and a half from her home. And she started her freshman year in the fall of 2005. Latasha's senior year of high school, she had started dating this older guy named Stanley Cole. He had already graduated high school, but wasn't in college and wasn't in like a trade or anything. I think just was kind of working part-time or full-time, just here and there. But, Latasha really encouraged him that he should try to go to Jackson State University with her, not even just for their relationship, but also, for him to do something more with his life. So he decided he would go for criminal justice. Latasha was thriving and she just kept excelling academically and making the dean's list and was really just starting to make plans for her future. She had already decided that she wanted to open up an accounting firm with her cousin Takesha when she graduated, and then, the two of them would work together and be their own bosses and, just start really living her adult life. In the fall of 2007, Latasha's junior year, she and Stanley actually break up. And Stanley kind of just moves on, starts dating someone else, and actually, I think, gets this particular partner pregnant. And I think withdraws from school. And Latasha moves on with her life as well. And she starts dating this guy named Marquise Smith. From what Latasha had told her family and friends, Marquise was a nice guy and always there for her. Like, there was a situation where she broke down on the side of the road and needed help, and he was right there and drove over and helped her. And, she just really genuinely seemed happy at this point in her life and in this relationship. So on November 10th, 2007, Marquise meets the family, and this happens at her little brother's basketball game. He drives them down, and, being that it's a close-knit family and they know that, he's coming down to meet everyone. So all her cousins are there and uncles and aunts. And, it's kind of like a little event at this basketball game, to meet the boyfriend. After the basketball game is over, Latasha and Marquise head back to Jackson. The next day, Latasha calls her cousin Takesha. And, her cousin said that she could tell by the tone of her voice that something wasn't right. But unfortunately, being that she was older and out of college and had a job, she was, busy at work and then had a meeting. So she said she would call her back. But when she calls the next day, she doesn't get a response from Latasha. The next night, November 13th, Patricia, Latasha's mom, calls her for her nightly check-in and, just to see how she is, and isn't able to reach her. She doesn't answer. The next morning, Marquise calls. The next morning, the Boldens receive a call from Marquise asking if either of them had seen Latasha because he hadn't seen her or talked to her since the night before. He tells them that her car is still on campus, but he's been looking everywhere. She didn't show up to class, and he thinks she's missing. So her mom and stepdad immediately drive down to Jackson to look for her. While they're en route to Jackson, Marquise calls them back and says that he has gone to campus police and has filed a missing persons report for Latasha, which kind of annoyed both of Latasha's parents, her mom, Patricia, and her stepdad, Danny, just because that's what they were coming down to do. Like they had already told him that that's what they were coming down to do. So, and the fact that he went in and, jumped the gun and reported her, before they could even get there, kind of bothered them and raised a little bit of flags for them. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Campus police searched the entire school, but Latasha was nowhere to be found. Because of the surrounding areas of Jackson State University had such a high crime rate, the campus police eventually called in Jackson Police Department for their assistance. Police spoke with Marquise and Latasha's roommate, and they discovered that Latasha's tires had actually been slashed on campus about a month prior. They also found out that Latasha had a class that started at 1 o'clock and ended at 2:20. Other than this information, police really didn't have a lot of evidence to go on, and this case was really slow moving at first. Latasha's extended family, like her cousins and her aunts and uncles, they all traveled down to Jackson on November 15th and did really everything they could to look for Latasha. They handed out flyers, they organized search parties, and her stepfather, Danny, actually spoke to a lot of radio and talk shows and was the one who gave the press release initially. In the documentary, he states that in college, he had actually taken a class for media and public speaking, and almost in a way felt like that was why, he had to be here in this moment. And, he just really wanted to bring attention to Latasha's disappearance and just try and do anything he could in this way, to help find her. Because of the lack of progress in the case, Jackson police reach out to the FBI for help. FBI investigators are able to pull up Latasha's phone records, and from there they can kind of see her locations on the day that she goes missing, November 13th. And it shows that she had been at Marquise's apartment and then started to travel towards Jackson State University. But at some point, the phone was either turned off or it died. But at some point, mid-route, her location, her phone goes off. The investigators also interviewed her mom and stepdad, basically just trying to figure out who they think could have done this. And her stepfather, Danny, says that he is actually suspicious of her new boyfriend, Marquise Smith. He stated that, like, he seemed really nervous around them. And, you know, at the basketball game where he met everyone, Marquise and one of Latasha's cousins get into, like, a little disagreement. And this causes Marquise to want to go back to Jackson, you know, right after the game is over and not want to spend any more time with her family. So that didn't rub them the right way. And then also how he just went ahead and filed the report before they were given the opportunity to do so. So those couple of things kind of made them, like, leery of him and suspicious of him. On November 21st, the FBI investigators interview Marquise Smith. He tells them that Latasha had spent the night at his apartment and then left to go to her 1 o'clock class later, like that early afternoon, and, you know, was probably the last person to probably, like, see her since her disappearance. And the investigators check his cell phone records, and based off of where his cell phone is and where, you know, he says he was and, you know, where she was, it all seems to check out, you know, his story. It seems to corroborate everything that he's saying. He also, though, in this interview, mentions to police of Stanley Cole, Latasha's ex-boyfriend. So the FBI start looking into Stanley Cole, and they find out from one of Latasha's friends that they think that Stanley was actually the one responsible for her slashed tires the month before. They also find out that Stanley had been physically abusive towards Latasha, and that she had specifically told one of her cousins of a night in which Stanley had slapped her before they had broken up. And with the breakup, it seemed like that was the last time that, you know, Stanley ever laid his hands on her. Sadly, though, on October 9th in Pearl, Mississippi, Latasha agreed to take Stanley to get his paycheck. When she goes to pick him up, she is on the phone with her boyfriend, Marquise. And because of this, Stanley decides to lunge at her, and he, according to the report that Latasha files with campus police, that Stanley pushed their glasses off of her face and her lip was bleeding. He also broke her phone in this altercation. Now, after she reported this to the campus police department, she didn't speak about it to anyone, not even her parents.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. How can you free up your team from time-consuming office tasks? Amazon Business empowers leaders to not only streamline purchasing, but better support their teams so they can focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future. Learn more about the technology, insights, and support available at amazonbusiness.com.
This episode is brought to you by the Toyota Grand Highlander. From daily routines to life-changing adventures, the Toyota Grand Highlander is spacious, powerful, and ready to take on life's grand challenges. Advanced safety features and innovative technology give you confidence for whatever life throws at you. And it's available in a hybrid Nightshade Special Edition, which includes sophisticated gloss black exterior accents and 20-inch black alloy wheels. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.
When I think about this sponsor for the podcast, I always just think of coziness. There is such a cozy aesthetic with Broadview Press. If you've never heard of Broadview Press, they are an independent publisher. They publish books like the new edition of The Wizard of Oz, The Great Gatsby, Dracula, all of your classic literary canon. But they don't just publish classic books, they also publish anthologies. So I just had the pleasure of meeting the editors of the Vampire Literature Anthology. If you are a Gothic fan, If you love the history of vampires, Nosferatu, you are going to love this anthology. You don't have to be a college instructor or even a college student to enjoy Broadview Press's books. For example, the vampire literature book has so many different literary examples of just where the vampire pops up in our zeitgeist of pop culture. Another book that I absolutely love is The Philosophy of Sports. I'm sure so many of you out there listening know someone who's obsessed with sports. Did you know that there's a whole investigative philosophy about why people are drawn to sporting culture, why there are die-hard fans? I'm looking at you, Philadelphia Eagles. I can say that because I'm from the Philly area originally. Anyone else not from the Philly area, we're going to give you a side eye. But Broadview Press just is so incredible with their books that they're always publishing. I love talking to Dylan, who works at Broadview Press, and Dylan always sends me copies of new books that have come out. So I know all about a new book called Everyday Ethics, which you definitely have to look into if you're interested in philosophy. But I also love that there's a collection of Victorian literature, American literature. If you have just been really interested in a genre, like you just love fairy tales, then you need to get their Folks and Fairy Tales anthology. So Broadview Press has been so kind to give a promotion code for all of you listening to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Ready? Write it down. Put it in your phone right now. It is ITBR20. So you get 20% off all of your Broadview Press books. Any book that you get is 20% off. BroadviewPress.com. Please let me know what you're getting from Broadview Press. I'd love to share it on our social media. And make sure you follow them on Instagram at Broadview Press. Enjoy your reading.
On November 22nd, Thanksgiving of 2007, police get a call from a car salesman in Jackson. He tells police that someone traded in a 1998 Dodge Neon, and it looks really suspicious. He explains that the carpet in the trunk was completely cut out, and it just did not settle well with him. So the police ran the VIN number, and it comes back to a woman named Simone Harris, who just so happens to be dating Latasha's ex-boyfriend, Stanley Cole. But not only is she dating Stanley, the two are also living together, and she is currently pregnant with Stanley's child. So, because of the connection, police have enough evidence to get a search warrant for the Dodge Neon. And the forensics team discovers that there is blood splatter on the walls and lining of the trunk. And when they test it, it comes back as a match to Latasha Norman. All three agencies, the University Police, Jackson Police Department, and the FBI, subpoena for Stanley's phone records. His phone records placed him at Jackson State University and then later pinged near a wooded area off of Brown Street, which of course looks super suspicious. I mean, he's going from, the school that he is with currently leaving and then, winds up going to a wooded area. What for, So investigators go up to Greenville where Simone Harris was staying. She agrees when they ask her to come down for just a conversation for an interview. And Stanley also agrees to go to the station as well. When the couple arrives, police take Simone back to an interview room and they ask her about Stanley's phone records. And she is very forthcoming. She tells them that there had been one time recently where Stanley was supposed to take out the trash, and it took him 40 minutes to do that, which anything longer than 5 minutes. I don't understand what took him so long. I mean, and I live in an apartment, so I have to like walk to take the trash out and the recycling. Like actually for the recycling, I have to drive. I mean, now that it's nicer out, I might walk depending on how much stuff I have. That's another thing too. But it's literally a 2-second drive. Like I can see the recycling bin from my apartment window, to where it is. So it's not that long of a walk, but even I'm saying, like, even if I had to do that walk there and back, it's not taking me 40 fucking minutes, So at this point, investigators realize they need to speak with Stanley. So they bring him back, and he's just very nonchalant and just casual in this interview room. And the investigators interviewing him notice this, and it instantly makes them suspicious of him. After quite some time going back and forth and aggravating one of the investigators that was interviewing him specifically, the two of them kind of went back and forth a little bit. But after like all of that, the investigator just asks him and pleads with him kind of to just help him find Latasha. And he says that Stanley starts to get teary-eyed and is just kind of shaking his head, and then says to the interviewing investigators, quote, "If I tell you where she is, will you let me see my mom?" End quote. So the investigators oblige, and she comes down to the station, and Stanley requests to see her before he tells them where she is. And an officer okays it. So mother and son talk for a few minutes, and when she goes to leave, she asks the interviewing officer, like, "Hey, is Stanley under arrest?" And the investigator tells her no, and which is the truth. They didn't have enough evidence for an arrest warrant at the time, and that he was just in for an interview, for, a conversation, not necessarily, questioning. So, knowing her son's right, she says, well, then, we'll be leaving. And they do. So, the officers know they've got to get moving and get started on this process of getting the arrest warrant for Stanley Cole. And they're able to. And the next day, November 29th, 2007, Stanley Cole was arrested for the murder of Latasha Norman. This actually came as a shock to some of Latasha's friends and family, because some of them had been in communication with him, and from what he was telling them, he was looking for Latasha. And also, a lot of them had been suspicious of Latasha's current boyfriend, Marquise. And I think that's because, Latasha didn't tell anyone about her domestic abuse situation with Stanley. If anything, her cousin knew about a situation that happened once in which he slapped her. So, because they were unaware of the domestic violence that was happening and the longevity of their relationship, I'm sure they didn't think he would be capable of doing something like this to Latasha. Investigators were having a hard time getting Stanley to open up about what happened with Latasha and what caused her death. And it seemed that Stanley took a liking to one of the female investigators, so they put her in and just had her speak to him more in hope that she could gain his trust and he would open up and tell her what happened. And he did. He told her that he and Latasha had gotten into an argument when they were in Simone's car when he picked her up from her class on November 13th. During the argument, he struck her in the nose with the back of his fist. He goes on to say that he realized he hit her too hard and that she wasn't breathing. He said he then panicked and put Latasha in the trunk and continued to drive around trying to figure out what to do. So then he decides what to do is to meet up with a friend, this friend's girlfriend, and his girlfriend, pregnant girlfriend, Simone. And at some point during the night, they go to a restaurant called Garfield's. And again, he's driving the Dodge Neon, where Latasha is still in the trunk. He said afterwards he then covered her up and dropped her body off in that wooded location and left. So investigators take Stanley to the area, where he says he dumped her, and he tells investigators how to get to the spot where he dumped her. And within 10 minutes, police are able to recover Latasha's body. Her body was found partially clothed, and her face and upper torso were covered by a piece of cardboard. Because of the time that her body was out there, at least 2 weeks at this point, and again with the conditions, with the weather and everything, they needed to get dental records to verify her because the decomposition was so bad. The coroner who examined her body found a nick in her rib cage, and a part of the bone was actually missing from that rib. The coroner sent all of this along to a forensic specialist, and they came back with this injury to the rib to be a possible stab wound. Police, of course, are not convinced of Stanley's version of events of how he killed Latasha, because there was no blood evidence in the passenger seat when she got hit, and then the evidence of some sort of injury with a jagged, sharp object to her rib cage that, obviously is a possible stab wound. From my understanding, police were never able to recover some sort of murder weapon. Stanley, in his defense, claimed that it was all an accident. Trial began in February of 2010, and on February 22nd, Stanley was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Sadly, Latasha's family would not be able to, continue to move on and be at peace because in 2012, the Court of Appeals overturned the case. Stanley's lawyer claimed that the amount of media attention that was given to the case prevented Stanley from a fair trial. And he also asked for a lesser charge to be submitted in place. A retrial is scheduled for 2014. The district attorney meets with the family and they come to an agreement where they offer Stanley Cole 40 years with no parole and no provisions. Stanley Cole immediately accepted. To this day, Latasha Norman's parents continue to be advocates for teen victims of domestic violence. Shortly after her death, Jackson State University created a domestic violence center in honor of and named after Latasha Norman. They also have a 5K run in her honor, which her parents have attended every single one since they've started. If you or someone you know is a victim of domestic violence, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE or 7233. You can also chat with someone online at thehotline.org. And if you missed any of this, I will have them in the description. Well, my true crime friends, that is it for the Death in the Dorm series. I can't believe we are completely done with season 2 of Hulu and ABC's Death in the Dorms. Check back soon for some brand new episodes. As always, follow True Crime and Academia on social media at True Crime and Academia on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. You will always find episode updates there. And to listen to every episode ad-free, go to patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room and become a subscriber today. Well, my friends, that's all I have for you today. Until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you all later.
I'm sure you've heard me talk about my friend Christian Garcia's podcast, but if you haven't, you need to look up his podcast, That Old Gay Classic Cinema. It is on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And he looks at iconic classic films through a queer lens, which I just love. He's done Singing in the Rain, All About Eve, It's a Wonderful Life. Yes, that iconic holiday film. I'm curious to listen. I need to know what is so queer about It's a Wonderful Life. Dracula, The Sounds of Music, you name a classic film, he's probably done it. So go on over to his Instagram, That Old Gay Classic Cinema. Make sure you follow him and you'll stay up to date with all of his recent releases. I know you're going to love it.